All right, anything come up? Cool. Sweet. Everyone gotten a typo yet, at least once? I sure did. All right, there are just two more things we're going to do here. I'm just going to add in an additional little helper thing, and then I'm actually going to deploy to Heroku. Um, yeah, and then we'll call it a day. So let me go ahead and do that. I'm going to start off creating a candidates show root. So I'm going to create a new file called candidatesshow.hbs. And in here, I'll say candidate.name for president and candidate.year. And I'll just end with that for right now. Okay, so I have my view. Now I need to set up a route that uses that view. So I'm going to have this show page be at app-get/candidates. And then if this was Rails, how would I put an ID in this URL? What would I write? Colon ID. Yep, it would be a symbol. Same thing here, except instead of doing an ID, I'm going to do a name. I could do anything I want. I could do like year or anything else, but I'm going to do a name here. What I'm going for is that when someone goes to /candidates/Steve, they see Steve's page. I think that's a lot nicer than going to /candidates/12, which doesn't really mean anything. /candidates/Steve, that makes much more sense. I know that I'm going to go see the page for Steve. And again, I could do anything, but I like doing it with name. So I'm going to do that. And then let me just start off with this. Okay, so take a look at what I'm doing up here, please. I'm going to do res.json rec.params. So this is something we haven't done yet. If I go to /Steve, I should see name Steve. Okay, so I'm showing you two things here. One is this res.json thing. If you put an object in here, foo, bar, name, Bilbo, then it will print that out as JSON up here. So we've seen three res methods: send, render, and JSON. So JSON prints out JSON. The other thing is printing out this rec.params thing. Rec.params, it's like params in Rails. It's all of the different URL parameters you have. So if I were to put candidate/name and age/number, then I go to /Steve/age/42. Now this should have two things in it. It has name Steve and number 42. So this just looks for all of the symbols in the URL and then puts them all into an object for me. It's just like in Rails, right?
And so the parameters are only stored in a response and request. Can you access them anywhere else?
They're only stored in the request.
Only in the request?
Yep. Notice this is rec.params, not res.params. So yep, the params are only in the request. And if you think about it, that makes sense. They're requesting this URL. So the parameters are in that URL that they are requesting, hence rec.params. Okay, but this is not all I want to do. What I want to do is I want to find a candidate with the name of whatever this is. So I'm going to say, let's see, how did I do it in here? Well, let me start off with this. I'm going to do var data equals name rec params.name year 2024. I'm just going to hard code in some data right now just to make sure everything's working. And then I'm going to render candidates show, and I'm going to pass this data into it. So then I should be all good to go. If I go to /candidate/Steve, I should see Steve for president in 2024. And I do. If I go to Frodo, I see Frodo for president in 2024. If I type Ryan Krolick, I see Ryan Krolick for president in 2024. Batman. I don't know if I spelled your name right, but we'll assume that I did. Yeah, so this is pretty cool. I have a way of getting this data into my view, but this is not my actual data. So I want to use the actual data that I'm getting from my sort of fake DB connection file. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to say var desired name equals rec params.name. So that represents the candidate that I want to look up. And then I'm going to loop through all the different candidates. DB candidates for each if desired name equals candidate.name res render. I'll just take this guy and put it up here. Okay, so now if I go to Steve, I should see Steve for president in 2024. If I go to Barry, I should see 2008. If I go to W, I'll see 2000. So this is working pretty well so far. I'm not doing anything fancy here. I'm just looping through an array until I find a candidate who has the same name as whatever it is they typed into the URL. And then when I find that, I spit it out. But what happens if that candidate doesn't exist? So if I go to /candidate/Batman, this is just going to hang forever. That's because what Express is doing is it's going through here and it's like, all right, Batman, you look for Batman. I'm going to loop through all the candidates. If a candidate has the name of Batman, then I'm going to show it. I don't have anything telling Express what to do if it doesn't find a candidate. And so Express is just going to sort of hang out until I tell it to respond with something. If you don't tell Express to respond with something, it just keeps churning around forever. That's why I see this guy continuing to go around and around up there. So I gotta have something in there for when it can't find a candidate with that name. So I'm going to munge this up a little bit. I'm gonna say var candidate output. And then I'll move this guy back down here. Candidate output equals candidate. This should be candidate output. Okay, and now this should work fine. So if I do Steve, I still get Steve. If I go to W, I still get W. If I go to Batman, I don't get anything, but that's a lot better than it just sort of churning around in there. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the view so that if no candidate has been found, it says this candidate doesn't exist. Whereas if the candidate is found, then it'll show me the information about the candidate. That's the last thing I'm going to do. To do that, I'm going to go back into this guy, and I'm going to say if candidate, do all this stuff, else that candidate does not exist. And now I should see for Batman, that candidate does not exist. There we go. Whereas if I go to W, then it works perfectly fine. So if there's nothing inside this candidate thing right here, this object right here, then it shows me the candidate doesn't exist. If there is, it shows me the information about the candidate. So here's one more helper. So far we've just seen pound each. Now we have pound if. All right, any questions about that? Cool, we're actually sort of rubbing up against the end of class right now, so let's see, do I want to do the Heroku thing? Nah. Yeah, you know what, I'm gonna do it. So I'm gonna wrap up with deploying to Heroku, then I'm actually not gonna let you guys do this if part, but instead I'm gonna do the Heroku part, and then I'm gonna open it up for questions to close. Is that okay? All right, cool. No one's going to say no, but whatever. All right, so the last thing I'm going to do is like, sweet, I've got my app. It's all dynamic. That is hunky-dory. I'm going to do Heroku create. And I'll get like steaming estuary or something. Nope, rocky earth. Okay, cool. Yeah, that sounds horrible. Never mind. Ready to deploy. Oh, damn it. You can't have an exclamation mark. Okay, commit. Ready to deploy. Okay, now I'm just going to do git push Heroku master.
Why can't you have an exclamation?
Because it thinks that you're trying to put like a bash command, a terminal command in there, and it doesn't know what to do with it. So you can't have exclamations in your commit messages when you do git commit -m.
There's no way to add.
Well, you can escape it by putting a backslash. Sorry, I cut you off now.
No, it's all right. There we go.
I think, yeah,
Yeah, if you do backslash exclamation mark, that should be fine. All right, so this deployed successfully. We can see that it's doing a couple things in here. What command is Heroku running to make all this stuff show up? npm install. Yep, so this is Heroku doing npm install. It's installing everything I had in my package.json.
Because we did that dash dash save, or was it automatic?
Yep, because we did dash dash save. If we hadn't done dash dash save express, it wouldn't know that I want to include express, and so this wouldn't work. Okay, all looks good. So now if I go to Rocky Earth, whatever that is, I should get an application error. Yay! Okay, so there's one thing you need to do when you're deploying these things to Heroku. You need to create a proc file. I'm not sure why it's called a proc file, but it's capital P rock file. And all you're going to put inside it is just the command you want Heroku to run to launch your app. So in this case, I just want Heroku to run node index.js. I'm not entirely sure why Heroku needs this, but they do. It doesn't work without it. So that's going to be my other commit, git add, git commit, added proc file. What? Huh? Oh, git, sorry. Wait, what? Git push Heroku master. Bullshit, it's up to date. Whatever. Thought I did. Yeah, I committed it. Oh crap. You know what? I'm in the starter code branch. That's not what I meant to do. Whoops. Yeah, sorry, my bad. I'm going to need to do git push Heroku starter code master. So starter code is the branch I'm on right now. That's this guy. And I'm saying I want to push it up to Heroku's master branch. Totally forgot about that. Oh, damn.
I dash forced it.
Yeah, don't do that. Forcing is bad. All right. Now, if I go here, we wait, and we wait. And we shouldn't have to wait this long. Okay, so if something doesn't seem to be working, what you can do is you can open up the logs. Do you remember how you did Heroku logs in Rails? I'll give you a hint. It's Heroku logs. But if you put a -t at the end of it, then the logs stay open. So if I do that, there we go. Okay, so here it is. And here are all of my logs, which are almost the same things as I would have gotten in my terminal. Anything with app in front of it, that's stuff that I would get in terminal. Anything with Heroku, that's specific to Heroku. And let's see. It's saying web process failed to bind to port within 60 seconds of launch. So there's one last thing you need to do when you deploy to Heroku. There are two things. One, the proc file. Two, is that Heroku actually doesn't use port 3001. In fact, you don't know which port Heroku wants to use for your app. So what you have to do is you have to let Heroku just use whatever port it wants to use. To do that, what you're going to do is you're going to say app.set, so we're seeing set again, port. And so this is configuring something in my app. In this case, it's configuring the port I want it to use. What I'm going to put in here is process.env port or 3001. So this is saying look for an environment variable called port. Heroku sets that environment variable by default. It'll set it to something. It could be 8675309, it could be 2, it could be anything. I don't know. While I'm running this on my computer, I don't have that environment variable. So instead, it's going to print out 3001. So if this exists, it's going to use it. If it doesn't, it's going to use 3001. And then the very last thing is down here. I'm going to say app.get port. So again, if a port has been set as an environment variable, it's going to use that environment variable. If that environment variable hasn't been set, it's going to use whatever this second number up here is, 3001 in this case. I see your hand. I'm just going to push this back up and then I'll answer your question. Fixed port, git push Heroku, starter code master. All right, what was your question?
Could you get rid of line 39 and 41 now? Is that all that doing? Just putting in I'm alive in the console?
Yeah. So you don't need that I'm alive, and you don't need it locally either. But you do still need this app.listen, app.get thing. You do still need to have that in here.
And so what's that now? Or what's that equal to?
I'm not entirely sure. Whatever Heroku sets it equal to.
What about like locally? If you were just
Oh well, if I do it locally, I don't have an environment variable called port set up on my computer.
Right.
So it's going to see, okay, well that thing's blank, so I'm just going to use 3001. Okay.
We put app.port because I know that it's app.set and then the name of it is port. Is that why we did that?
Mhm.
If it was named something else, it would be app. Whatever that name was.
Well, it would still be app.set, but then whatever its name is, yeah. But really the only things you're going to do, you're really only going to use app.set for two things, port and view engine. There are a couple other things you can do with it, but really the only two we're going to have are port and view engine.
I mean, the lines down on 39.
Oh, right.
Oh, okay. So you have to do the app.get and port. So it's kind of mimicking the same thing that we put up there. And
Exactly.
To read that.
Yep, exactly. Okay, and so now if I launch this guy, there we go. So there's my app. I am now on Heroku, and all is well.
Why is it that CSS? Because yours was still red. What's wrong with you take the back?
Oh no, I got rid of the red. Instead I aligned everything to the center.
Okay.
So my CSS is working fine. I can go and see it right there
Yeah, I thought the red was still. Okay.
in all its glory. Okay, so now what I want you guys to do is I'm going to take 2 minutes, talk to the person next to you about what your big questions have been for this class and or what seemed most confusing to you. And you're not allowed to say everything. That's not an acceptable answer. And then we'll bring it back after those 2 minutes and talk about it. So take 2.
So I think that's when your browser hitting that, and then let's say you're hitting local 2000.
Like that? Oh, yeah, yeah. Yep. All right, guys. Let's bring it back together, please. What should we talk about? Frisch.
This is silly, but is there a spell check Atom package?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure how well it works though, because I mean, you got stuff like, you know, like default layout and layout steer. It's not gonna like that, so take it with a grain of salt. Right?
So the app.listen thing at the bottom,
Mhm.
I was noticing that you don't necessarily have to load the browser or the port or anything, but if you just hit up NodeMon on your terminal, it will console.log that I'm alive thing.
Mhm.
So what's it actually like listening for? What that enables it to know the console.log that?
So it's called app.listen because it's saying listen for requests to this certain port.
Yeah.
So this I'm alive really just means I'm listening. So I'm listening for someone trying to get something from localhost 3001. Remember that like each of those ports is sort of like a phone, and it's like, okay, there's someone listening to this
So
phone
you're
right
setting
now.
a port with that.
Mhm.
That's it.
Correct?
So first time I seen something like how you did with the candidate output, it was just bar candidate output, then a semicolon,
Mhm.
and then down on the bottom you put that was equal to
Yeah, so
candidate.
so what this is doing is it's just creating basically like an empty object. Well, not even that. It's as if I were to do this equals null or equals undefined. I could do either of those. And so it just creates a variable that's not defined. If I wanted to, I could do something like var candidate output equals candidate, but I like to declare all my variables up at the top. So it's just declaring an empty variable.
So you create an empty one to define it underneath of it.
What else? Wow, really? You guys are talking a lot. There's got to be something else. Nyron?
Me, so like, I see that it can do a view page, but I guess the point is that you could eventually be able to put information like save information like an index post and have more precedence. That's not the point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, everything you can do with Rails, you can do with Express. Everything you can do with Sinatra, you can do with Express. Everything you can do with Express, you can do with Rails. They all do the same thing. It's just which way do you prefer? But yeah, if you can do something in Rails, you can do it in Express.
Well, why do they mix like Angular language with JavaScript? Why do they try to do that?
Because, like, why is Angular written in JavaScript?
No, like, this uses like a handlebars, and it also uses like JavaScript.
Handlebars is just standard. I mean, it's like how everything in Ruby uses ERB. Handlebars is just sort of the standard syntax for JavaScript. I'm not really sure why it ended up that way. It just sort of is. Pippin?
Could you quickly talk about how you got the number of candidates to show up?
Sure. So in the candidates index, let's see. Okay, so that's dealing with the index root. So it gets all the candidates from the database. This db.candidates, if I were to console.log that, I should see exactly what I got from my JSON file. And I see Steve, Barry, W. So that's what db.candidates is. It's this array of 3 different candidates. That's db.candidates. So I'm taking that and I'm saving it to this property called candidates. So because I put it inside this object, that's now available inside my view. Because it's available inside my view, now I can take that, well here, if I just did candidates, then I should see this guy. I get object, 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 object. I get an array with 3 objects inside it. I don't actually want that though, I want the length of that array, which in this case is 3. Right?
Can you refer to your params in your view?
No, you have to explicitly pass them in with something like this. So if I wanted to, I could do something like, I don't know, params rec.params, and then I would have access to it. Anything else? Cool. So this afternoon, I just want to check. Obviously, we didn't get to the Mongo stuff yet. I believe, yep, that'll be you guys this afternoon. So you're going to be talking about how to add Mongo. If you want to look ahead, that is the, so there are 2 sort of, I made this walkthrough of it here, and then they sort of took this and like built some stuff on top of it, but it's still like all the same code. So if you want to, you can look ahead at this thing and then get sort of a leg up when you go into that class. But that'll be this afternoon, and then just generally talking about how it all fits together. Okay, cool. Thank you guys.